could do a whole podcast series on how you and I are different.
I think we learn something new every day about how we're different, though.
Every single day? You think so?
We're either reminded every day.
We're definitely reminded.
Or we learn
I'm reminded every day.
Or we learn something new every day. Welcome to the Far More Podcast. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Jason.
Welcome to another episode of the Far More Podcast.
Yay, another episode. If you're joining us for the first time, we are so excited that you're here. So hit the like button, hit the love button if there is one, drop a comment, tell us where you're watching or listening from, and we're excited to dive in. Are you nervous today? Let me ask that first.
I'm always a little anxious with these things because you control what we talk about. You kind of go, hey, this is what I'm going to ask you. And then I could get caught off guard. And you know me, I'm a planner. Like I like to know what's happening.
You're not a fan of the surprise.
I don't like surprises.
No,
at all.
I wanted to throw you a surprise party one year. I think I was going to plan like some like guys night, poker night type situation, but I didn't. But I told him that, hey, this is what I thought about doing. And do you remember your reaction?
I'm sure it was very calm and easygoing. And
well, no, you weren't.
Go with the flowish.
Yeah.
Because that's me. Go with the flowish.
No. You were like, oh, God, that sounds awful. I think that's what you said.
And then,
that sounds awful.
And then I do the thing with my face, too. Like, my face is...
What thing?
Where I give you this look like you're the dumbest person in the world. Like, that's not what I mean. It just comes through my face.
What?
And it's really when I'm just trying to think about what happened. Uh-huh. But the look I give is like, you're a complete moron.
But you're aware of this.
It's been brought to my attention on numerous occasions. And then, and I become aware of it, but I have been able to, I can't control it yet. And it's not about the other person. It is literally me in my logical brain trying to process the information that just came to me. My brain goes, why in the world would you do that? And I'm trying to understand why the other person would do or say that thing. And it's not like they're a complete idiot. It's like, what am I missing that this makes zero sense to me?
I think part of the thing with it is your brain it processes really fast. I have learned that your brain processes things like a supercomputer. And I'm not being funny. Your brain processes information so much quicker. I think that especially quicker than me. Hello, there's a very slow hamster running this wheel up here. But yours is like the Energizer Bunny. And so I feel like you are 10 steps ahead of almost everybody. Literally. I feel that way.
Well, but the problem with that, there's lots of problems with that.
Oh, I didn't say that it was a good thing, girl.
I understand. I was going first.
Okay.
The problem with that is I start to presume or assume where someone's going with a conversation or a thought pattern. Mm-hmm. And so either I check out because I'm like, I already know where you're going with this. Mm-hmm. I cut you off and shut you down because I'm like, let's not waste any more time. We know where you're going with this. Or I've already come to the conclusion. And when the conversation deviates from the conclusion, I've already prescribed in my head. That's when the what in the world face comes out. I'm like, no, that's not the end of the story. That's not how I thought this was going to go. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's so reflective of our verse for this podcast, right? Ephesians 3:20, mm-hmm. where God can do far more abundantly than all that we may ask or think.
Right.
The think part, right? Because I'm always trying to think out the answer, think out the cause and effect. And God's like, you're not even on my level. You can't even process my vision, my plan, my etc. I have to bring you into that, little Jason. Right? And so when things happen in life, that's where I get caught up is like, I thought it was going to happen this way, or I thought by now we'd be through this thing. And when that's not the case, I give the stank face, mm-hmm. which
being on the receiving end of, he's making it sound cute. It's more like, You're an idiot. That is the look. Yeah. Don't make it sound cute.
But public service announcement, it is not you on the other end, which I know people already knows. It's not you being an idiot. It's me in my brain trying to figure out, where did my processing go wrong?
Well, every now and then it's me being an idiot. We
okay.
can call it. Look, I am willing to admit that sometimes the look is probably warranted, but the severity of the look is.
Well, I think with us, it's usually not you're an idiot. It's usually
Thanks.
No, it's more of like, did you even think through this?
Probably not.
And usually the answer turns out to be no. And then that's when I give you the face. I'm like, how can you even come to a decision or conclusion or do an action without even processing information?
Yeah.
Like, that's where I'm like, we are so different. Shocker. But I'm like,
yes.
Did you think about this for 3 seconds? Like, I'm trying to, again, if my brain works like a computer, I'm trying to get new inputs to understand, okay, this is how she receives information. This is how she processes things to come to this conclusion. And when you go, there were no inputs to the decision or thought, I'm like, how do you get to anything without inputs into your decision process?
It's called emotional decision making.
That's not decision making. That's where my brain goes, no, that's foolishness, right? I think that's the trouble is when, trouble. That's the fun of our relationship and marriage.
That's one word for it.
That's what keeps it exciting.
Yeah.
Is when you're like, no, this is just how I feel. And I'm like, well, feelings have no place in decisions.
And I'm like, huh, what? That's all I know. All I know is to make decisions based on feelings, which is completely opposite of you.
Right, because if I made decisions based on my feelings...
Oh, let's not go there.
I would make really bad decisions.
Yeah, right.
So I go, no, need to park those. Go here, logic, objective. Let's park the feelings, because feelings will lead me down a very, very, very bad path.
So all of you out there, drop a comment. Do you, when you are making decisions, do you lean more towards logic and practicality and you're working through all of the steps? Or are you more like, this is how I feel, this is the emotion that this evokes, and so that's what I'm going to base my decision on? We would love to hear, because I know that there's going to be both sides of the camp. And I'm interested to see how many are more logic and analytical and how many are emotional and feelings.
Yeah. And I'm not a complete robot, right? I see your face. I'm not a complete robot. I love processing systems.
You do.
For sure.
You do.
But I'm not a complete robot.
No, you're not.
I take the human side into account as an input. Like...
Wait.
I understand how that sounds as I'm saying it.
You just broke down your whole.
But I don't make decisions
here.
Discounting feelings or people at all. Mm-hmm. Like that weight is most of the decision making.
Sure.
Right, but it's just not reactive. I take that, I absorb it.
I
process the feelings, and I process how someone else is going to receive it. I process from an empathy side. And then I bring logic on top of that. I just don't roll with okay, here's the feelings, must do this.
Right. So welcome to the Far More podcast, where we're just going to unpack all of how we process things. Yeah. We're just so different. But that's what makes it
Breaking
exciting.
news. We're different.
This just in. Oh, yeah. But you know what?
What's that, Liz?
God brought us together. We'll find out why eventually.
And he keeps us together, right?
Well, yeah.
He's the glue that keeps our relationship together.
Yes, he is. So you want to know what we're going to talk about today? Because we're not going to unpack how we're so different, because y'all, that would take about a month long. We could do a series. I think we could do a whole podcast series on how you and I are different.
I think we learn something new every day about how we're different, though.
Every single day? You think so?
We're either reminded every day.
We're definitely reminded.
Or we learn
I'm reminded every day.
Or we learn something new every day. So yes.
every day.
This is not karaoke.
Oh, man.
I know.
I'm in the wrong place.
I
Okay.
love some karaoke.
So, here's something I want to talk about. I
What's
want
that?
to talk about, because this is something that is current in my life and that I'm working on with other people, making friends as grown-ups.
Oof.
Oof is right. It is. It's hard. It's harder than I anticipated. What are your thoughts? Do you find that making grown-up dude friends is hard?
Well, yeah, I don't really have that many. I think it's...
Do you have any?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that the challenge with grown-up friendships is multifaceted. One, there's the time aspect. Mm-hmm. To have real meaningful friendships as adults, you have to be super intentional. And you got to be super intentional with your time. And we are just a culture of busyness and a culture of selfishness with our time too. Mm-hmm. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so time is against us, one. Then to get to actually deep, meaningful friendships, you got to not only be intentional with your time, you got to be intentional with how vulnerable you're going to be.
Sure.
Right?
What would you say the difference is between acquaintance versus friend versus like deep friend?
I think it's...
Because I feel like those are the three sort of like pockets that we have.
Yeah.
We have the acquaintance, which would be on the big circle. Then we've got the friend who's a little bit more closer. But then we have like the core, that inner circle.
I would say an acquaintance is who would I say hi to at a social gathering? Who may I invite to a big social gathering? A friend is who would I call to give me a ride to work?
Interesting. Okay.
And then when things in life are really hard, when I'm like, hey, our marriage isn't good.
Wow, why did you go straight to that?
Well, because I think most marriages are
Yikes.
I think most marriages are struggling. That's why.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, just to be real, I think when you get to here's deep issues, or here's what I'm struggling with. I'm struggling with drug addiction, alcoholism. I'm struggling with insecurities at work. It's when you get to those deep things, your circle gets real small on who you're going to call.
Yeah.
Right? So I think practically maybe that's how I'd put it in those buckets.
So when was the last time that you felt like you had a real deep connection with another guy? I know that really didn't come out right, but I mean, when was the last time that you sat down with another dude and you were like, "Hey, this is where I'm struggling." Like, is it something that happens regularly or semi-regularly or just nowhere near enough?
Yeah, not as often as I'd like, right? I think it comes in waves. There'll be times where me and a friend or a group of friends will meet up every Saturday morning, have coffee, and unpack life and struggles and what God's doing in our life, what we want God to stay away from in our life, right? I mean, that's real vulnerability of, hey, this is a problem. I don't know if I want to do anything about it.
Right.
That's when you know you have real friendships. You can bring that to the table and somebody will push you to say, the only reason you're saying that out loud is because you know it's wrong, right? So let's do something with that. So it's seasonal or comes in waves. It's not consistent for me.
Yeah.
Honestly.
How long do you feel like it took? Because I know that with this group of guys, I know that you had to start really at the very bottom. How long do you feel it took for y'all to start to gel, to start to trust, to start to share and kind of peel back those layers of vulnerability?
Yeah.
Because I know it wasn't immediate.
Well, I mean, what's helpful for me is the fact that, I suck at small talk, right? So
you hate it.
I hate small talk.
I love small talk.
What are we doing? I don't care about the weather or the game, or I don't know who has how many passing yards. Like, I don't keep up with that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So I immediately go to deep conversation fast of people that I'm connected to. So that's helpful. One is we'll get past the how's work, how's kids, how's the weather, how's your golf game. Like, check.
But don't you feel like some of that is necessary to facilitate an actual friendship or connection?
If you haven't broken through the vulnerability, yes.
Okay.
Right. You got to build that relationship equity first.
Yeah.
And so
You can't just skip.
you can't just jump into tell me your
Hey,
greatest
how's your
fear.
marriage?
How's your marriage? Yeah. Are you still a terrible husband? Like, you can't lead with that. There are times I want to lead with that with some guys.
Sure.
I want to, because that's my tendency is I just want to shake you and go, everyone sees that you're a terrible husband, but you.
Ouch.
Right? That's what the inside of me says.
That's what inside Jason
That's what
says.
inside Jason says.
But
right?
outside Jason.
But then I process the feelings and emotions and empathy and like, okay, how do I get there to this conversation? That's where I want to go. I want to get there. I want to get to how do I shake you and make sure you understand this is iron sharpens iron. Because that's my sweet spot is iron sharpens iron. That's what I love.
Don't I know, girl?
I know, and you're not a big fan of that method. I thrive. That's
Well, I
one of
can
my
tell
strengths.
because you're getting excited
I
just
get-
talking about it.
I get excited. I get excited challenging and being challenged. Now, is it always? Do I like being on the side of the challenging? Of course, everyone does. Do you feel vulnerable and insecure when all of a sudden people are coming at you? But if I know it's with positive intent, and these are people that love and care about me and want what's best for me and are strong Christian men, they're just trying to drag me closer to Jesus, then I'm leaned in. If I'm like, I don't know you, you don't really know me, you don't know the context of my life, and you're trying to do that, we're going to end up probably with some words.
Oh, let's segue because you said something dragging you to Jesus. And that made me think of one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, which is I think it's one of your favorite passages is Mark 2, where the four men take this poor paralyzed man who just wants to see Jesus because he knows that Jesus can heal him.
Do we know that?
Do we know what?
That he wants to see Jesus because he knows Jesus can heal him.
Well, I think I asked you that in a previous episode, and I don't know that you necessarily had an answer for me.
What I said is we don't know the relationship of the four men with the guy.
True.
What we know is the men knew they needed to get this person to Jesus. I don't know what the paralyzed man knew.
Interesting.
I think the paralyzed man, and there's not a lot of context on the front end of Mark 2. So those Bible scholars, you comment, please help me out on this.
If we have any out there.
Bring it. He knew of his obvious brokenness. I think that's where we start.
Paralyzed man.
The paralyzed man. He knew he was paralyzed.
Well, yeah, right.
He knew his obvious brokenness.
Right.
Right? And he wanted to be healed of that. And there's four men that come along and they say, we know if we can get you to Jesus, he can heal you. He can heal you. And so they're on the way to see Jesus, who's teaching in this house in Capernaum. They get there. This place is packed out, right? Because Jesus always draws a crowd. There's
either for better or for worse.
Right. And so, the folks on the inside are leaned into Jesus' teaching. There's folks on the outside, scribes and Pharisees, probably going, what's he doing? Let's see if we can catch him on something, right? They get there. They can't get him to Jesus through the front door, right? And one of the things that I think about and talk about a lot is how many times are the, quote, church people in the way of Jesus? When you desperately trying to get someone that's broken that man, if we can get this person to Jesus, their life's going to change. And you walk through and you bump into church people.
You're crowded out.
You can't get there, right? Something happens and church people are in the way of Jesus. That's and that's a different conversation. But these four guys, they desperately knew, let's get this guy there. They go on the roof of this house.
They were determined.
Where
there is a will.
They were determined on their mission and their objective to get this man to Jesus. They get on the roof, and then think about roofs back then.
Oh, mud?
Right? Right. They're not pulling off shingles. They're digging through straw and mud and probably manure.
Ugh, yeah, that's...
And that mental picture for me is, if you are trying to get someone that's broken to Jesus, you're going to get your hands dirty and you're going to have to dig through some crap in their life.
Yeah.
Right? But you got to be so committed to the journey and the mission of, I know I'm going to get my hands dirty. I know I'm going to be sweating. I know my back's going to be sore from carrying this person. But I so believe if I can get this man to Jesus, his life will be changed.
Right.
Right? So they lower him down. And then, because Jesus kind of like, I guess, looks at the scene is how I vision it. And I'm like, there's these four guys, there's this man. And the first thing he doesn't immediately heal his obvious brokenness, right? He doesn't necessarily say, get up and walk first. No. The first thing he does, he says, your sins are forgiven, right? Because the four guys and maybe the man saw the obvious brokenness.
Right.
Jesus saw the real brokenness and the real problem. And he says, we're going here first. This is the important thing.
Right.
And so often I think we don't understand the important thing or the real brokenness. We're focusing on this thing. But when we get to Jesus, Jesus goes, here's the real issue.
Right.
Right. And it took me years to understand what Jesus really said in that moment. He looked around and he says, because of their faith, right? The four guys that brought him there, because of their faith,
you are healed.
Your sins are forgiven.
Oh,
right.
Right.
And so not only were they willing to get somebody to Jesus, but Jesus said, because of your faith, not what the man's faith in Jesus. Mm-hmm. I always think because of my faith, X, Y, and Z, is because of the people that brought him to Jesus. Because of their faith, your sin is forgiven. And do we have that kind of faith? One, to bring someone to Jesus? Are people not being saved because we don't have that level of faith? I don't know. And it makes me just think about, if I'm not sweating, my back's not hurting, if I'm not digging through crap, my hands aren't dirty, and if my faith isn't strong enough to know I have to do all this to help somebody not be broken and get them to Jesus, am I living out what we're supposed to do as Christ followers?
Whew. That's a lot.
It's a lot. And I've read this passage, I don't know, it feels like 100 times.
So many times, yes.
And every time I'm just like, is this the picture of what we're supposed to do as men and what following Christ really looks like in terms of bringing someone to Jesus? And Jesus saves them because of our faith and our belief that, man, if I just get you there, if I drag you there, if I claw through the mud and the manure with you, I know Jesus will save you.
I wonder if they did have to drag. Obviously, they had to carry him because he was paralyzed. I get that. I'm sort of talking almost mentally. Did they have to drag him there? Because like you said, we're not given much context on the paralyzed man's mental state, his mental capacity, how he was feeling about the situation. So I am curious if he was like, y'all, I don't want to go. And they're like, no, you just don't understand. Yeah. You just don't get it. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. That's the attitude we need to have. You just don't understand. If you could just,
that's right.
If you just knew what I knew, if you knew what Jesus was capable of doing, you would come. So I'm just going to drag you whether you want to go or not. So are we saying that maybe that's how we're supposed to be with the broken, is dragging them?
I think what I'm saying, and when I've looked at Mark, is I always go, where are you in the story? Are you the person sitting on the floor next to Jesus soaking it all in? Is that you? You've been a Christian your whole life and you're soaking it in, right? That's what you're doing. Are you someone that's more skeptical? You're on the outside kind of looking in going, what is this thing really about? Mm-hmm. Or are you that casual Christian that's kind of on the outside going, I want to be close, but not too close, right? Or are you this champion of the faith that's dragging someone to Jesus,
right?
That's doing all it takes? Or are you that person that needs to be dragged? That's the hardest one for me, is raising my hand and saying, you know what? I need friends. I need some men that are willing to drag me to Jesus. That's always been the hardest one for me, right?
Why?
Because that's just admitting such vulnerability and such weakness. And I need other strong people to get, that's just hard for me. I want to be the guy that's sweating, carrying somebody to Jesus.
You want to be the hero.
Right? I want to be the hero. Or I want to be the person sitting next to Jesus, soaking in the worship music, praising, hands up, right? Just soaking that in, feeling like I feel good about getting this message, right? That's comfortable, right? It's great, but it's also...
But it's still necessary.
I'm not saying it's
to
not
be
necessary.
poured into.
But it's not the end game.
No,
right?
It's not.
You get fed
so that you can feed others.
So that you can go drag somebody to Jesus. Am I staying there?
Yeah.
Am I staying there in that moment? And then when I'm going to work on Monday, everything flips.
Yeah.
Right? That happens almost every week for me. I'm soaking in on Sunday. I'm worshiping. I'm like, man, I needed this. I needed this. And then I get to the office on a Monday and everything changes. Everything gets hard. I'm in a different world. Like, I feel like I'm in a different gear and I don't know how to shift back.
This is going to sound so basic. Do you forget that you're a child of God by the time you get to work on Monday and problems arise and people are being people and stuff is happening? Do you lose sight of your faith? Because you're in such work mode?
I don't know if it's losing sight of my faith. I think it's distraction.
Okay.
Right? I think it's distraction. I think it's, I'm not dragging someone to Jesus. I'm walking on the road to Capernaum. I'm walking to Jesus' house. And all of a sudden, I kind of get there and there's a crowd and there's things in the way and I never get to Jesus. Right? I just never get there because things happen along the way. So it's just distraction for me more than anything. So distraction and frustration because, work just comes with a lot of problems when you lead and when you lead people.
Leadering is hard.
Leadering is hard. It's really hard.
But you're so good at it. I believe you're so good at it. I think you're a very good leader. I believe that God has gifted you greatly.
Some days are better than others.
Well, that can be said for everyone.
There's some days are better than others.
Okay, so
that's Mark 2.
That's Mark 2. Another point that I have here that I think would be fun to talk about.
Oh boy.
I
like fun.
Because
Hang on.
We're different.
Right. As an adult, you talk about hard being friends. It's hard for me to figure out what I enjoy and what's fun now.
I would agree with that.
Right.
For you. Yes.
When somebody says, what do you do for fun? I freeze. I'm like, what does that mean? That's kind of sad to admit.
It's not kind of sad.
Okay.
It is sad.
Right.
Girl.
But I'm like, what do you mean? I don't have time for fun.
Well, yeah. And what question do you know what question I've asked you multiple times and you're like, you just get this blank look on your face?
How are you feeling?
That's one of them, but not this one. When was the last time you were excited about something?
When was the last time I was excited? That's right.
Yeah.
And well, again, I think somewhere along the way, I've created a defense mechanism to not allow myself to be excited because the thing I hate more than anything, hate's a strong word, is disappointment.
Yeah.
Or missing some kind of expectation that I've put on myself.
Or someone else.
Or someone else. Mainly it's about myself. I don't put as much expectations on other people. Like I've stopped doing that because that leads to a very bad path for me. But yeah, it's the fear of disappointment. You hear me say a lot. It's not that I don't, you're like, you're competitive. I'm like, well, it's not that I love to win. I don't care about winning. I almost expect to win. Because I expect that I'm going to put in a lot of work to win, right? That's why. It's because I feel like I'm going to work my way to the win. I'm not going to stop until I do the thing.
No holds barred.
Yeah, willing to do whatever it takes. It's that I hate to lose.
Yeah.
Because that just brings out this feeling of disappointment. And because my brain goes, why did you lose? And I analyze the whole situation of how did I lose?
Whereas if I lose, I move on. Like literally, it's done, move on. But you, on the other hand, you spend the next maybe full 24 hours, sometimes even 48. It depends on what that thing is that you or I or we lost on.
Yeah.
And you are breaking. It's like you're watching the tape.
It's game film.
It is
That's
game
right.
film. And you are like, where did it go wrong? Whereas I'm gone.
But do you know why?
I'm doing laundry, or I'm feeding a kid, or I'm just like, life is wonderful all over.
I'm like, how do I keep this from never happening again?
Yeah.
Like that's why I'm watching the game film back in my head. I'm like, how do I make sure that I never feel this way or this situation never happens again?
So
Like,
funny
what did
how
I
God
miss?
makes us so different.
Yeah.
So different.
So funny.
Well, so what I was going to say is and this is sort of in the same vein, sort of. I almost always assume positive intent from others, and you are almost always skeptical and come at it from people are only doing things out of selfish intent.
Well,
Is that fair to say?
I think that's a little too far.
Or am I stretching it too much?
They have to do some actions before I get there. My starting place is people are sinful and broken, right? Which means people are naturally selfish in that. That is a starting place for me. I think that's a difference. A lot of people start with all people are good. I'm like, biblically, I don't see that. Biblically, I start with we're all sinful and broken, right? Thank goodness we're saved through a lot of that, those that follow Jesus.
Yeah.
But it's more like I start more agnostic. I start with, I don't know where you are. I'm not classifying you as good or bad yet until you do something or have an interaction, right? But you don't start in my trust circle. You definitely start on the outside of my trust circle.
Okay.
But it's not a you need to earn my trust scenario.
Well, but that's basically what you just said.
It's a I need to invite you into my trust circle. It's not about you doing something or not doing something. It's about me being willing to be vulnerable enough to allow you into that trust circle.
So it's a little bit of both. It's on both people for you. It's not just you. It's not just them. It's both.
Right. The forgiving people 70 times 7. I can't logically process that biblically. But we are still married, so maybe I can.
This guy. Y'all pray for me. Pray for us.
Pray for us every day.
Pray for him. Just pray for us.
Yeah. But it's not natural that you're just, hey, yes, you're in my circle.
I'm like that though. And maybe that's not good. I don't know. I trust very easily. I open up to other women very easily. I am willing to bear some scars and some vulnerabilities pretty quickly. Those nails.
Mm-hmm. That's what gold bars sound like. Why? What? And maybe this is just God's design, but you've had moments in your life where you shouldn't have trusted people and things have gone bad and people have hurt you. And so, but you don't focus on that.
No.
Right? You don't focus on that. And again, I think it goes back to my game film of if I'm disappointed or hurt, how do I keep that from happening again? Okay, well, step 1, I got to make sure this is safe.
Well, because you're so bothered by that feeling, I guess. I'm nowhere near as bothered by feeling hurt or disappointed like you are. It doesn't bother me nearly as much as it bothers you.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying this is good or right.
No,
I'm saying it's my natural tendency that I have to work against and pray through a lot. But it is my natural tendency of people are broken and messy, so I got to be very cautious on who I let close, right? If I'm too vulnerable, they may weaponize that against me. right? You know, I hate that that's my starting place. But on the other side of that is, if you're in my circle, oh, I will go to the ends of earth to battle for you.
And I believe that 100%.
Like, if you're in my circle, it's hard to get out once you're in.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out.
I'm speaking from experience.
Yeah. Even if we've had a fallout and I haven't talked to you in years, you call me and need something, I'm there. Right? I'm there no matter what's happened.
Yeah.
So I don't let people out of the circle very easily. So there's the other side of that.
Absolutely. There is upside. For sure.
But I've been working really hard on the vulnerability side. The fact that I'm sitting here right now with this hot mic on and a video camera right there talking about our life that I'm going to allow you to post and distribute.
Like everywhere.
Like weekly. Like wherever you get your podcast.
That's right.
Wherever you consume your social media. Hashtag uncomfortable for me. But this is part of my journey.
Yeah.
This is part of my journey of not just developing as a man, but just developing in the way I share my faith and developing as a follower of Jesus.
Well, and I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for really stepping outside of your comfort zone and being willing to do something like this, because I know it's not easy, and I take it for granted, because stuff like this is exciting for me and it's fun for me and I love it. Like, I get excited about this and I thrive being in front of the camera, talking into a microphone. And so I easily forget how this is like, woo, hey-oh, trying to knock the mic off, how this is way outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, you're definitely lights, camera, action, Jesus, smiles, let's go.
Let's go.
I have to not think about it. I have to not analyze and process the fact of, what are you going to do with this? If I think about that too much,
wall it off.
Right? It's to be like, here's the script, stick to the script, not saying any of these things, not going anywhere near these topics, because here's the repercussions of this, this, and this, and I'll analyze this whole situation. And
that's a whole other podcast.
Right. Then the next thing we'll be able to, we'll say the alphabet. That's about as far as we can get done. Right. So I have to let that go.
I think you're doing a good job.
Well, we're on day like half, so.
We're on day like 0.25.
0.25. So we'll see.
Okay. What do you think?
What else you got for us today?
You don't think that's enough?
I mean, do you want to talk about how we met again? Or no?
Oh, that was on the thing, wasn't it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So here's what I think we should do. Start that in a whole new thing.
Okay.
Because the easiest way, I think, for...
You're still recording.
I know. Hang on.
What are you doing right now?
I'm about to close this out.
Well, you should tell someone this. I can't read your brain.
I'm about to close this out. Or do you want to close this out and I'll like say a little something?
No, you go. And then if it makes sense, I'll add something.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us for yet another Far More podcast. We're figuring this thing out together, and we're so glad that you're on this journey with us. So make sure that you subscribe, hit the little bell, hit whatever button it is that you need to hit in order to find out every time we drop an episode, because you don't want to miss this, do you? They don't want to miss this, right?
I mean, I don't want to miss this.
You don't want to. I don't want you to miss this either, girl. That's so
right.
Sweet.
Let's go.
Bye, y'all.